Good afternoon. Welcome to Business 360, your complete view of the stories driving business, markets, and the economy. I'm Apa Ongpin, and this is the Bilyonaryo News Channel. The Agriculture Department files complaints before the Ombudsman over alleged ghost farm-to-market roads in Davao Occidental. The supposed cost to taxpayers was 94 million pesos. An economist warns the Middle East crisis could push millions of Filipinos deeper into poverty. We bring in JP Rivera, Senior Research Fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. In global markets, SpaceX officially files for to the AI rally. Roads paid for but allegedly never built. The Agriculture Department files complaints before the Ombudsman for alleged ghost projects in Davao Occidental. Joan Manalo with our lead story.
Agriculture Secretary Francisco Tiu Laurel Jr. has filed complaints before the Office of the Ombudsman against several officials of DPWH Davao Occidental. This is over alleged non-existent farm-to-market road projects in the region worth 94 million pesos. Tiu Laurel arrived at the Office of the Ombudsman at around 9 o'clock this morning, carrying complaints for graft, malversation through falsification of public documents, grave misconduct, and serious dishonesty, filed against 6 government officials, including a district engineer, project engineer, and the OIC chief of the construction section, along with 8 private contractors.
How do you describe these projects? Anong itsura itong mga subject projects?
Pinuntahan ko mismo yung yan earlier or late last year. At wala talaga. Zero. Wala kang makita.
According to the complaint, the respondents allegedly falsified documents related to the projects, including statements of work accomplished, certificates of payment, and disbursement vouchers. When asked why the complaints were only filed now,
Case build-up takes time, ano? Hindi pwedeng basta-basta mag-file ka lang biglaan at gusto natin pulido ang kaso para solid. At alam niyo naman sa mga kaso, they can get good lawyers. So we have to really prepare the case, no?
The Agriculture Secretary said more complaints are expected to be filed, this time involving 7 other projects. He also revealed that there is an ongoing case buildup involving another alleged anomalous farm-to-market road project in Ginubatan, Albay.
This took about 7 months. Siguro baka ganun din. No? May 3 months na, so maybe another 4 months. No? Pero yung 7 mukhang mas earlier na yan maka-filean dahil halos sabay-sabay ito kaya lang ibang location ng iba. So we just have to be very sure sa documentation at solid ang kaso.
The Agriculture Secretary is urging the Ombudsman to immediately investigate the complaints and hold those responsible for the alleged anomaly accountable. Joan Manalo, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
A deported Chinese national linked to a major mining firm is now at the center of questions over foreign ties and control of strategic mining assets. Joash Malimban has this exclusive report.
Aside from being a big-time businessman in the province of Batangas, Bilyonaryo News Channel has also discovered that deported Chinese national Shi Rongfa, also known as Steven Macaraig Herrera, was once involved in some of the largest mining businesses in the country. As of 2019, Herrera and his wife Karen de la Cruz were listed among the top 20 shareholders of Mark Ventures Holdings Incorporated. The company is allegedly controlled by the family of former House Speaker and later Representative Martin Romualdez, and is the only company in the country with exclusive rights to large-scale bauxite mining. Bauxite mining operations are heavily concentrated in the province of Samar. Bauxite is the primary raw material used in the production of aluminum for aerospace parts, vehicles, electrical wiring, and other industrial products. According to international media reports, China is currently the world's largest importer of the mineral. Before Mark Ventures acquired these exclusive rights, the company first merged with two other major mining companies in 2017. One of them was Asia Pilot Mining Philippines Corporation in Samar. According to the company's articles of incorporation, the firm was owned by deported Chinese national Steven Herrera. Its 2017 General Information Sheet showed Herrera and his wife De La Cruz as directors of the company. Ruby C., Rodolfo Yu, and Isagani Yu were also listed as company officers. The three were also listed as the top 2, top 4, and top 9 shareholders of Mark Ventures in 2019. According to the official website of Mark Ventures, C remains a director of the company to this day. Her profile also identifies her as the former president and director of Asia Pilot. Apart from Asia Pilot, Herrera was also involved in several other companies, where his business partners included top shareholders of alleged Romualdez-linked firms. In 2016 and 2022 SEC documents of Lukfuk Capital Holdings, Ruby C., Rodolfo Yu, and Isagani Yu were also listed as company officers. Meanwhile, in Southern Alluvial Minerals and Alumina Resources Incorporated, where Herrera was listed as president, other top stockholders of Romualdez-linked companies were also identified as directors in 2018. Among them was Isidro Alcantara Jr., who was also a top 10 stockholder of Mark Ventures during the same year. Also identified was Ruben Alcantara, who served as Senior Vice President for Marketing of Mark Ventures, and Hermogen Real, the Corporate Secretary of Benguet Corporation and the Director of Prime Media Holdings. Two companies also allegedly controlled by the Romualdez family. In April, BNC reported on Herrera's quarrying operations in Batangas, as well as his close ties with Batangas Vice Governor Hermilando Dodo Mandanas.
Sinasabi niya sa akin, kundi siya, nasa mining siya. I think, kung ginugol mo yung pangalan niya, nandun siya. May investment siya sa mga naka-listed sa market.
Herrera was deported back to China after spending a year in detention under the Bureau of Immigration due to fraudulently acquired Philippine documents, including a late registered birth certificate, Philippine passport, and driver's license. He also declared himself a Filipino national in all of his SEC documents. Herrera was also investigated for possible links to an espionage network in the country. Although Herrera and his wife De La Cruz were only listed as shareholders until 2019, Herrera's name was again mentioned in a 2022 CP technical report of the company. Bilyonaryo News Channel reached out to Mark Ventures for comment regarding its past transactions with Herrera, but the company is yet to respond to our request for statement. Joash Malimban, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
The Department of Justice says the ICC arrest warrant against Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa is now enforceable. Agencies have been ordered to carry it out. Ched Gatchalian fills us in.
The Justice Department now calls Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa a fugitive from justice. Justice Secretary Frederick Vida announced the ICC arrest warrant against Bato is now enforceable. This comes after the Supreme Court denied his petition for a temporary restraining order against the enforcement of the ICC warrant.
The Philippine law enforcement agencies, which would include the PNP, the National Bureau of Investigation, are now tasked to effect the arrest of Senator Bato de la Rosa.
Vida said there is now an ongoing coordination among the government agencies tasked to go after Senator Bato, but he did not specify the operational details, including if the senator will immediately be brought to The Hague once he's arrested, like what happened to former President Rodrigo Duterte. Vida also confirmed they have a lead on Bato's locations.
Yes, definitely. I heard there are leads that they're working on. As to the exact leads, I cannot discuss them. First, I'm not privy to those leads. They are available to our law enforcement agencies and to their units.
Yesterday, Bato's camp stressed they plan to file for a motion for reconsideration. This as they wait for the High Court to decide on the main issues raised in the petition. The DOJ said they recognize that filing for such motion is an available legal remedy to Bato. When asked if it may intervene in the operations, the DOJ said it will cross the bridge once it gets there. Vida has a warning for those who help or may help the senator to evade the arrest.
Tandaan natin, no? May biktima to. And their search for justice started in 2017. Libo, daan-daang mga kabataan, mga toddlers, di ba? You give a full account of all this, yung mga namatay na Pilipino.
He said individuals who plan to help Bato will face possible violations of Philippine laws and ICC rules. Ched Gatchalian, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Up next, how is the Middle East crisis changing the quality of life for millions of Filipinos? We get the outlook of John Paulo Rivera, Senior Research Fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. This is Business 360. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Business 360. I'm Apa Ongpin. A top business group is warning of another cost pressure that could eventually land on consumers. The Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry says expected destination fees from shipping lines are hurting the commercial transport sector.
They have come to us on several times crying on random destination charges being levied to them by shipping lines because they are deregulated. So these charges can amount to almost 100,000 pesos on top of what you are paying on shipping freight and insurance. So imagine all this cost is being passed on to the importer, and the importer, of course, will just pass this on to the consumers later on. Again, inflationary.
The PCCI notes the sector has yet to receive government subsidies. We take a broader look at economic challenges facing the country. Joining us is John Paulo Rivera, Senior Research Fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. Welcome to Business 360, JP.
Hi, good afternoon, Apa. Thank you for having me.
JP, you came out with a study last April that got a lot of attention. The energy crisis, you said, might push 3.1 million Filipinos into poverty. Is that still true now?
Well, based on that study that PIDS did about poverty, yes, but I would have to frame it carefully because that figure mentioned is actually a risk scenario, not necessarily a forecast. So it simply tells us that if the oil and energy price shock would remain elevated and would transfer or feed into transportation costs, food, even production costs, then it simply says that millions of Filipinos, particularly those who are very close to the poverty line, can be pushed below it.
Mm-hmm. So that's a worst case scenario in other words. Yeah. What should the Marcos administration do to stop those Filipinos from ending up in poverty? What's missing from their current response, if anything?
Well, that's actually a very tricky question because it's being debated upon by many economists. But from a policy note that I recently released, we were arguing there that the Marcos administration should actually move from the Ayuda First strategy towards a more broad relief, so targeted, time-bound, well-monitored, even having an exit strategy from this Ayuda, like the fuel subsidies, transport support, even the cash transfers should reach the poorest of the households, public transport workers, farmers, fisher folk, those small stakeholders that are actually taking the blow of this oil price shock. But you know what? The compassion is there. The government compassion is there. What is actually missing right now is if I may put it this way, a clear transition plan, meaning how long the relief will last and how will the beneficiaries or the recipients will actually graduate from the aid coming from government so that we also reduce dependence.
Yeah. What if these high fuel prices persist past the crisis, di ba? Mm-hmm. I mean, they need to have an exit plan.
Because it's not permanent.
Well, we don't know. Mm-hmm. How is increased poverty showing up in the lives of Filipinos now? Are more families pulling their kids out of school, skipping meals, closing small businesses?
This is a very interesting question because we have to understand that poverty is actually showing up less dramatically rather than an initial expectation that if oil prices will increase, then poverty will happen immediately. But the sad thing about this is that it happens painfully, in the daily sacrifices of our fellow Filipinos. Like you're right, no? Households may pull out their children from school, but the immediate effects would be like this, no? Families would now reduce their food quality. They would delay any hospitalization or medical care that they would have to consume. Worse, no? Filipinos will borrow more, postpone schooling expenses, or even cut their transport trips, which will affect the entire economy. For small businesses, no? They would now be facing thinner margins, lower consumption, and with electricity, power, even logistics getting more expensive, I mean, their bottom lines are being affected. So before the 3.1 million families actually happened, before fellow Filipinos are actually counted as poor, as of now, many Filipinos are actually living poorer lives. It's not an automatic adjustment. It happens now.
The president has said already that he sees the possibility of stagflation, and they see the danger of stagflation. What's your take?
But yeah, that has been on the table for quite some time. But for me, based on data, on current data that we have, yes, I see the risk. The risk is persistent. But personally, I would not yet call it a full stagflation, because growth momentum, we're just seeing that growth momentum is becoming fragile. Inflation is here. So it's not a stagflation, a full stagflation, but as of the moment, I would call it a partial stagflation. The risks are persistent, they are present, but the danger now here is whether inflation would continue to stay high long enough to affect negatively consumption, investment. To some extent, Filipinos would start losing their jobs.
Mm-hmm. JP, you just heard our story on PCCI. They said businesses are coming to them crying over these random destination charges from shipping lines. What should be done to ease the burden on them?
Okay, actually that's something new, And taking the lens from government, I believe the government should be able to treat this issue, this random destination charges, more of a competition, transparency, consumer protection issue. Because you know what? This can be mitigated by publishing charges, standardizing, where possible, the pricing, the costing. But of course, government's role, it has to be subject to periodic regulatory reviews, because the burden, will eventually land on the consumer, which will affect their consumption, their expenditure, and such.
Food inflation has been one of the most persistent drivers of poverty amid the Middle East crisis. Is the government's food security strategy working, or are we still too import dependent? I mean, the last I heard, we're importing something like 70% of all our food.
Okay. You know what? Yes, it's working. It's working, but it's working partially. It is not working enough to keep or to contain food prices, because the Philippines has always remained to be too exposed to imported fuel, fertilizer, feeds, even key food items. So that, even when rice prices improve, food inflation can return through logistics and energy costs. So it's an entire system, a system that is being affected by one particular shock. So, and we have been calling this for quite some time, that the strategy should be to go beyond import management, but also look into productivity, cold storage, farm-to-market logistics, even improvement of irrigation technology, climate proofing the sector, and improving our local food value chains. And this will allow us to contain prices, be able to manage it despite the ongoing shocks.
Based on projections, the peso could sink as low as 65 to the dollar Are you seeing that? And how will that affect businesses?
Well, you know what, the continuous depreciation of the peso down to 65 is always a possibility, but I see this under really severe, no? Really severe external shock. But discussions on the 65 pesos to $1 should not be treated as the base case. No? We do not see this to be just the base case, because the weaker peso, if in case it will happen, it's sad to say that it will raise the cost of fuel, even our imports, no? Fertilizer, all those essentials that we are importing will increase and will diffuse to higher inflations. Although, I must emphasize that exporters and OFW households or families will benefit, but for the short term only, because the expensive imports due to a weaker dollar would actually feed into the prices. So it will just eat up whatever increase in monetary value this depreciation will give to their remittances.
On top of all of this, we have political instability. ICC rulings, Marcos Duterte tensions, ongoing investigations. How does this political noise translate into real economic pain for ordinary Filipinos? Or does it?
I see. You know what? Political instability always creates uncertainty. And when institutions are always driving, no? Can always drive our economy. And if institutions are losing focus, then it's actually the ordinary Filipino who's going to take the blow. And when this political instability, or if I may say political dysfunction, coincides with what's happening right now, like slower growth, currency depreciation, rising inflation, even power shortages, the market sentiment is suffering. And at the end of the day, bottom line would be, it will be the Filipinos who will take the blow through higher prices, difficult supply chains, and all other issues that will affect their purchasing power and their confidence in the market and in the economy.
If you had one message that you could give to economic managers directly, what would that message be?
Oh, well, no, this oil price shock, no, and even the political issues, this is actually not new anymore in the history of our country. So I guess it's really a good reminder that we do not treat shocks like this, inflation issues, as a short-term problem alone.
Yeah.
In fact, I see this more of a resilience problem. We have been encountering the same issues, oil price shocks, since time immemorial, no? But then we continue to be reactive to this one. So I guess it's really a good reminder for us to be more resilient, be preventive, be proactive by thinking of policies to protect the poor now, fix logistics, fix the food systems, address energy security, food security. Because relief must always be immediate. But reform starts now. It has to be structural. And this crisis that we're encountering right now is, again, a reminder to be more responsive rather than reactive.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good distinction. So finally, to end this interview on a lighter note, despite everything, what can we still be hopeful for as Filipinos?
Oh, it's a good way, no, to cap this discussion. I've always been very optimistic and I'm always been very hopeful because looking at the indicators, there are still indicators of the Philippine economy that are strong. The Philippines still has a very strong macroeconomic fundamentals, even complemented by a strong monetary policy. And complement that, we have a young workforce, we have resilient consumers. Our economy is being buoyed by OFW remittances, our IT BPO sectors, our tourism, entrepreneurships, a lot of MSMEs that continues to support the economy. And the crisis that we're encountering, I would say it is serious. It is serious, but we always have shock absorbers. And that's why I'm calling on our economic managers, public, private sector, that this is a structural issue. This is a whole of society approach. And it's a good reminder always that we have to build long-term resilience rather than just addressing the problem one by one. And then when the problem happens again, we will continue to react again for the same problems we've been encountering in the past.
Thank you for your insights today, Mr. John Paulo Rivera of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies.
Thank you very much.
Wall Street is buzzing up, buzzing as NVIDIA crushes earnings expectations. That's coming up. Welcome back to Business 360. I'm Apa Ongpin. SpaceX's initial public offering takes off, setting up what could be one of Wall Street's biggest listings ever. The Elon Musk-led company could be valued at up to $1.75 trillion, with a possible NASDAQ debut as early as June. That would place SpaceX alongside the world's most valuable tech companies. Speaking of the world's most valuable tech companies, NVIDIA posts record quarterly revenue as the global AI boom shows no sign of slowing. The world's most valuable company says revenue surged 85% to $81.6 billion. NVIDIA says AI infrastructure is expanding rapidly worldwide and agentic AI is scaling across industries. Wall Street rallied more than 1% Wednesday as chip stocks surged ahead of NVIDIA's earnings. NVIDIA beat revenue expectations and issued a stronger forecast. But its shares still slipped in extended trading. Analysts say the lack of China sales in the outlook left investors wanting more. Philippine shares rode the global rally as NVIDIA's earnings blow past expectations and sent Asian chip makers surging. The Philippine Stock Exchange Index returned to the 5,900 level. Sectoral indices were mostly in the green. Among the most active stocks, BPI led gainers, climbing nearly 3%. Pure Gold was the biggest laggard, down more than 2%. Maharlika Investment Corporation posted a slight income gain in 2025. The Sovereign Wealth Fund says its comprehensive income rose 2.3% to 2.74 billion pesos last year. Higher business income helped offset rising operating expenses as the fund expanded its operations. State-run Land Bank cuts its InstaPay transfer fee from 15 pesos to just 8 pesos. Finance Secretary at Land Bank Chairperson Frederick Go says the lower fee will make everyday financial services more accessible to Filipinos who rely on digital payments. Alliance Global Group Incorporated reports higher first quarter earnings, supported by gains across its key businesses. Net income rose 6% to 7.8 billion pesos. The company attributes the improvement to strong performance in real estate, leasing, and hospitality, as well as a gradual recovery in its spirits segment. The man linked to the Manila Bay white sand controversy is out of EEI Corporation. Francis Lloyd Chua has resigned as director of the construction firm, effective immediately, to focus on what he calls personal endeavors. Chua first joined the EEI board in 2023 after his group, Industry Holdings and Development Corporation, helped wrest control of the construction giant from the Yushchenko family. More stories when we return. Business 360. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Business 360. I'm Apa Ongpin. A civic group is calling for a probe into allegations that the country's driver's license system can be accessed remotely from abroad. Dexter Ganibe has the exclusive story.
Civic Group Filipino League of Advocates for Good Governance, or FLAG, filed a formal request at the National Bureau of Investigation, demanding an immediate criminal and counterintelligence probe into the Land Transportation Office's driver's license system, which is reportedly being controlled remotely from Malaysia. Edwin Covdevilla, the Secretary General of FLAG, raises a major sovereignty and national security alarms over the foreign-operated access to the country's public identity infrastructure. Their request is based on the 2022 Ombudsman resolution, citing an internal LTO Management Information Division report that IT contractor Dermalag has full access and control over the 5-year driver's license inventory and printing application modules. Cordevilla said their group has confirmed that until this day, the source code of the digitalization project is still with the German biometrics company Dermalag.
So yung source code is part of the product. It's the soul of the product, yung source code. But they haven't delivered it up to now.
They also asked the National Privacy Commission to also look into the matter that may have already compromised personal information of more than 14 million Filipinos. The FLAG also calls for a congressional probe.
Magkaroon siguro ng legislation na hindi pwede yun na sana kung hanggat maaari hindi sana pwede na isang foreign entity magkaroon ng ganitong klaseng access sa ating data.
The Office of the Solicitor General has already petitioned the Supreme Court to nullify the multi-billion LTO Dermalag ID contract, renewing its push for a temporary restraining order. For Bilyonaryo News Channel, Dexter Ganibe, Abante.
President Marcos says the education sector was neglected in the past years. Ivy Reyes reports.
President Bongbong Marcos underscores the importance of tending to the education sector as he spoke before presidential scholars of Obanto, Bulacan Thursday morning.
Naiwanan lang tayo ng kaunti dahil sa nakaraang ilang taon hindi masyadong nabibigyan ng atensyon ang ating education sector. Pero ngayon dahil sa aking paniniwala na ito nga ay karapatan ng bawat sa ating kabataan na sinong gusto mag-aral, kailangan meron silang paaralan, meron silang paraan upang makapag-aral na mabuti at maganda ang magiging instruction sa kanila. Kaya't namin binuo itong programa na ito.
The Department of Education was previously headed by Vice President Sara Duterte before now Education Chief Sonny Angara stepped in 2024. Education is not a privilege, PBBM said. It is a right that should be afforded by everyone, which is why the government should ensure the education sector works in favor of the people. The program is under the 200,000 peso aid granted to all barangays in the Philippines under the Bawat Bayan Makikinabang program funded by the local government support fund.
Sa ganung paraan ay makakatulong tayo ng napakarami dahil ang barangay sa Pilipinas more than 42,000. Kaya kung kada barangay makakakuha tayo ng 5, more than 200 to 210 plus thousand ang natutulungan natin.
The selection of presidential scholars puts a prime on graduating students who face financial problems. Each beneficiary receives a 20,000 peso cash aid from their local government. Marcos advised the presidential scholars to use the cash aid well and remember how education is a lifetime asset to help build communities and improve lives. The president wished the students luck and hoped to see them holding diplomas the next time he drops by Obando, Bulacan. For B360, Ivy Reyes, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
The Bureau of Internal Revenue is making it easier for small businesses to close shop. Microenterprises no longer have to go through mandatory tax audits when shutting down operations. Compliance penalties will immediately freeze once a company submits complete closure papers. Microenterprises with clean records will get their tax clearances within 3 working days. But the BIR warns it can still audit businesses for any hidden liabilities. The BIR calls this its Ease of Closing Business reform, part of the Ease of Paying Taxes Act. In other news, Toyota Motor Philippines is recalling 63 Lexus units over a fuel pump defect. The Department of Trade and Industry says the defect could cause engines to stall and increase the risk of a crash. Owners will be notified through official channels once parts become available. Samsung workers have called off a planned strike, which was supposed to take place today after reaching a tentative wage deal, easing fears over global chip supply disruptions. Nearly 48,000 union members have suspended an 18-day strike plan to vote on the agreement. Samsung Electronics has pledged to improve labor management relations. The deal came after multiple failed talks and a union strike announcement yesterday. Negotiations restarted after South Korean Labor Minister Kim Yong-hun stepped in to mediate. And that's Business 360. We'll keep tracking the moves that matter across markets, policy, and the economy. I'm Apa Ongpin. Thank you for joining us. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.